Meantime, a sharp warning from Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas to Hamas. Shape up or the Fatah-Hamas unity government will fail, he says. Abbas says the government must operate as one, even in Gaza. He made the statement at the Arab League meeting in Cairo. His comments come ahead of the key week for the unity government, as talks to implement a reconciliation agreement are slated to take place. Joining me now with more on the issues affecting the Mideast is Kate Gould, and she's a Middle East policy expert and a peace advocate with the lobbying group Friends Committee on National Legislation. And Kate, welcome back to our broadcast. We really appreciate it. So what's on a lot of people's minds right now is the Islamic State. It was talked about at the Arab League meeting. Secretary of State John Kerry is going over to the Middle East to try and gather more support. We know it's happened in Syria, the civil war there. So many people have been killed, the refugee crisis there. How difficult is this going to be for the United States and its coalition to enlist support in northern Syria against IS?
Very difficult, certainly. I mean, for the U.S. to bomb Syria or even lead a coalition in bombing Syria means that automatically you're emboldening both the Assad regime and the Islamic State at the same time. So every new U.S. bomb that is dropped in Iraq, or the potential for U.S. bombs to be dropped in Syria, is a recruitment bonanza for the Islamic State and for other extremist groups that really feed off of this narrative that the Islamic State is the only group, it's perceived as the only group that's resisting military intervention from the U.S. and other foreign countries that have been so heavily involved in Iraq and Syria.
We know Secretary Kerry just returned, and President Obama, from the NATO meeting. They've got 9 countries working now. We know who the partners are. The Middle East, the Arab League, at least, has said that it is supporting U.S. efforts. But how important is this second trip for Secretary Kerry going over to the Middle East?
Well, clearly the Obama administration is seeking intensified support from the Arab League, from those other countries. Well, you know, this is, of course, very reminiscent of the Bush administration's, you know, the Bush administration, when they sought this coalition of the willing to invade Iraq in 2003, then they mostly got support from Poland, from Australia, from the United Kingdom, from these, you know, this Euro-American coalition. And they know, the Obama administration knows that's bad optics. And so they really want to get, they want to get Arab faces, frankly, and they want to get them at the forefront of this military attack on Iraq and potentially Syria.
And how big of a hot button issue is this for all the neighboring countries in the Middle East to IS? It's a group of only 30,000 people,
right? But
they know no borders.
They don't, and I think that we're seeing this, the conflict really explode on multiple fronts, and that it is a top concern for many of these countries. Now, unfortunately, many of these countries have actually fueled the conflict there, fueled this ever-expanding conflict in Iraq and Syria, and they have led to the growth of IS. We're seeing that many reports show that Saudi Arabia, Qatar, other Gulf nations have actually funneled weapons in that the Islamic State has depended on for its growth, and also have really pushed this extremist ideology that has fed the rise of the Islamic State. So rather than seeking military support, what we should see the Obama administration doing is really securing support from the Gulf countries to stop their arms sending to the Islamic State, and actually work for a political solution.
Kate, I wanted to ask you about Israel and Gaza. Israel has accepted the Egyptian ceasefire proposal, obviously, but there are several demands that are not being met there, which include, you know, the seaport, the airport, the release of the Palestinian prisoners, obviously. Both sides agreeing to discuss this matter again in a month. Is there likely to be some headway on this issue?
It all depends. Much of it depends on what kind of progress is made in lifting the blockade. So we've seen that as really the crux of the issue that everything else hinges on. We saw that in November 2012, when there was that previous escalation of violence in Israel and Gaza, that violence ultimately came to an end because there was a ceasefire agreement, and it required Israel to lift the blockade on Gaza. That never happened. And that helped lead to this current eruption of violence that we saw over the summer, where we saw over 2,000 Palestinians be killed, scores of Israelis as well. And then that ended because of another ceasefire agreement that required Israel to lift the blockade on Gaza or make substantial progress toward those ends. So far, we have seen some very token changes made on the restrictions, made on opening the borders, but nothing significant, nothing that really changes the everyday lives of people. I've been talking to friends in Gaza who I stayed with a couple years ago, and they've said that, I mean, of course, things have only gotten worse, that there's the need for rebuilding is so much more intense than it was before. And when I was there, they were struggling to rebuild a kindergarten, and of course, that kindergarten has been bombed. And I think that's just one story of the utter destruction that has really seized all of Gaza.
Absolutely. Kate Gould, thank you as always. We really appreciate your time.